Hello everyone, and welcome. Today I'm entering a week 9 post my hysterectomy surgery, and some great news. Here are my test results and comparative results, and it's quite amazing how everything has improved. I went from severely anemic with my hemoglobin under 7. Now it is 13.6, so I'm super happy. I haven't had a hemoglobin this high like ever, which kind of gives me a great joy because I've been turned down so many times from donating blood because I always have been anemic in my life, and then of course with fibroids it just made it much worse. My vitamin D still needs improving, but everything else has improved drastically. I mean, it is amazing. And because I've been meditating, I've been doing self-healing, spent time with my family, been to the course with swimming, vitamin D. So I feel all of this is really making a huge difference on that side. But interestingly, today, and that is what I actually want to talk about, someone sent me through Instagram the article from the Times where one woman is describing a really negative experience, psychological impact post hysterectomy. And I'm quoting, I'm reading it here from the Times magazine. When she had her womb removed, Susie Stevens thought she was losing her mind. Now she wants to know why there is such a lack of research into the devastating impact of the operation. Now, few things here. Usually, hysterectomy is done, of course, for a cancer and all the cancer-related condition. And many people who are talking about hysterectomies from this perspective or a very conservative think that this is the only reason why there should be a surgical option. Having said that, majority of the hysterectomy surgeries are actually performed on women with the fibroids, with heavy uterine or irregular menstruation, and with pelvic pain. In addition to that, the other non-cancerous condition apart from fibroids, which are indicative of the hysterectomies, are endometrial hyperplasia, uterine prolapse, and endometriosis. What usually happens as a part of the side effects is that women can have a loss of a sexual feeling, loss of libido, severe depression, diminishing maternal feelings, joint muscular pain, severe hip and back pain, cardiovascular diseases, palpitations. So all of these have been reported by some women when it comes to or a post hysterectomy. There could be also side effects as a chronic bowel and urinary problems. They could be debilitating fatigue, insomnia, panic attacks, anxieties, and palpitations. In addition to this, there could be a lot of emotional traumas, sense of loss, depression, deep sorrow in a way. And these are the things that are not really covered, or they're not really researched properly. Because again, how do you make a research? What do you research for? I mean, even as a physiotherapist, when I'm looking at the timelines and the recovery phases, and just on the physical, I'm not even talking about the emotional recoveries. There is such a vague guidelines. It's almost like 6 to 8 weeks, you should not do anything. And if it was an open cut, then it's a 12 weeks. And after that, you can do everything. Because there is, the only guidelines is that we know the timeline for incision healing, the timeline of collagen resurfacing. But other than that, it is like, who is at what stage, what kind of engagement, what do we do to prevent Dukilo? Okay, so the guidelines are very, very vague. They're very general and generalized. But of course, I understand you have to be very careful. You have to be very, with a lot of precaution. You do not want any, because again, if you start too early with recovery, you can create a bigger problem. There could be herniations. For instance, one of the consequences of prolonged anemia in my particular case is that my fascial sheets are extremely thin. So if I were to introduce the hardcore and heavy duty exercising too early on, that can result in herniation. Having said that, there is no guarantee that one violent sneeze, for instance, is not going to create the same issue. But I'm digressing. As I was preparing for my surgery, see, whether or not to have a surgery is between you and your doctor. That's number one. So listen to your doctor. Make an informed decision about what is the best solution for you based on where you're at in your life. And again, if you have a choice and the luxury of choice, if you have a cancer, you don't have a choice. So, because that kind of trumps everything else. So we're not talking about the cancer, we are talking about non-cancer conditions. There are a lot of non-surgical options available. They could be with the birth control pills, they would be contraceptive injections, they could be Mirena IUD, they could be the tranexamic acid, the tablets that can be given. So in my personal case, I have gone to two doctors. First time when I started observing much heavier bleeding, when I started having like more than normal issues. I mean, I carried on with my period started becoming heavier and heavier over a period of time. And I've been just adjusting. So just buying the different pads, different length pads, a bit thicker. Started having different, being more prepared when I'm going out, because I had my entire youth, I had severely painful periods on one side. I always had the polycystic ovaries, so they were superbly irregular, very painful and very short, like 3 days in, out, done. Like would finish my entire cycle with like 4 pads. All right, but it was a torture. It was like a really torturous process. So that was my baseline. Then I was told when I get pregnant and when I have my child that the passages are gonna open, and that the part of the problem was that everything was too narrow, and that the menstrual blood with what would have been placenta, so the lining of the uterus would kind of get stuck, and that would create the pain and cramps and everything. And as the flow would resume, like a second day, whatever little I had, it would have been over, and then the spotting would be third day. So, however, I had a child, I had a very long delivery, 26 hours, and ended up having cesarean because guess what? I wasn't dilating. So I remain as I was. So, however, one thing post-pregnancy is that my periods became somewhat regular. They became a little bit more with a little bit more volume in terms of, and then over the last few years they started getting gradually increased, but it wasn't increased that would have been alarming. Having said that, 10 months ago, well, now it is over a year ago, because I'm 2 months post-op, over a year ago it became bad. It became that I would wake up in the puddle of blood. Sorry guys, if you're squeamish, don't listen. You know, we are talking about surgeries, uterus, about the blood, bleeding, pain. So if you haven't figured out and you're squeamish at this point, pretty much it's gonna get more graphic from here on. So switch off, don't watch. But they became actually more and more unmanageable. So finally, I geared myself to go see a doctor and went to one, and I was really impressed. She was super professional, in her probably late 50s, 60s, so not old, or maybe even younger. So, but it looked really nice. And then the moment she looked at my results, and she's like, we need to do a full hysterectomy right away. Everything goes, including your ovaries. And I was like, whoa, like, let's hold your horses. I said, what? Because to me, whenever, I mean, I can process anything. That's life. When you have to deal with something, you have to deal. But it just took me by surprise, the aggressive approach as the first choice, as the only choice. As I was like, wait a minute. I said, isn't there like step A, B, C, or some pathway before we talk about the surgery? Why are we talking about surgery as the first choice? I'm managing. Yes, I am bleeding, but I'm okay. I'm by large okay. So, and then she was like, well, you crossed your 40s, you're not gonna have more children. So, see, even that was my reaction. I'm not sure what you said. So, I was like, I am not ready to go and explore a surgical option as my number one choice. What other choices and options do I have? And she was like, well, everything else is irrelevant and it's pointless because you're gonna end up having the surgery anyways. And I was like, okay, thank you very much for your time. I said, let me do a little bit of reading. Let me kind of also educate myself a little bit further. And at the same time, I was looking for another doctor, for another opinion. And that is how I ended up and met my doctor who eventually had done the surgery. So I went to my doctor, Dr. Angela, and I was like, okay, this is what it is. She kind of examined me and she said, apart from heavy bleeding, do you have any other issues? Do you feel very heavy? Are you in pain? I said, no, actually, I'm not in that much of a pain. By comparison, again, I have a history of huge amount of pain. So by comparison, not comparison, that is, I was not, to me, this amount of pain was absolutely fine, right? So I said, no, I don't. And she goes like, do you feel happy? I said, well, I do feel a little bit my stomach before I will get period. I can feel my fibroids as well. I mean, I could actually palpate at that time as well. But the moment the period is over, I'm fine. My biggest problem was the bleeding, the amount of blood that would come in one go, like it would gush. So that was like really like unnerving. And then she said, you know what? At some point of time, you will have to deal with it. However, there is no urgency or emergency of doing it immediately. If you're not ready, if you're not okay, no point of, she said, also given the amount of fibroids, I had 5 fibroids at that point of time. 10 months down the line, they were huge. So, but that's a little bit later. So, and because I do have a history of the cysts and tumors on my breasts, which was the reason that I have been taken off any hormonal pills, off the pain, off the birth control very early on in my life, because, and that was something that could be have been taken as because contraceptive pills will also decrease, you will not be ovulating, therefore the lining is going to have you will have a less blood. So all of that could have been taken, but not for me, not in my particular case, because my case was different. So for me, it was not appropriate to do any hormonal treatment. However, she has given me tranexamic, Tranexa, the tablet that I've been taking. So, but that is tranexamic acid tablets, and she said this is going to help control bleeding. Off you go, live your life. If you start noticing any bigger changes, that is when you will have to come back here, and then we will re-examine, see what is the case, and we will deal with it. So 10 months in my case have gone. So I had a sort of 10 months in somewhere in the back of my mind that I knew that this is gonna have to happen, given my age, given the number of fibroids, given that I am not planning to have another pregnancy, that most likely hysterectomy would have been a choice rather than trying to move one by one of these big fibroids. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I had around 10 months to sort of think about it and let it simmer, let it sit there, even though I have not been consciously thinking about it. And probably out of those 10 months, 3 months earlier, I should have gone there, but I'm stubborn like that. So I have been ignoring the signs that the bleeding has become heavier. I have ignored the signs that I was getting tired. So I completely missed the signs that of anemia, and I was getting into a severe anemia phase. So all of that has been happening. I would just, as the bleeding would start, I would take a pill, the bleeding would subside, and all the other, I started noticing that my stomach was getting, I could really palpate the bulges on my stomach. So all of this has been happening, as I said, probably 3 months too late, but I am the way I am. So, which kind of helped me make peace with a lots of things, even though I have not been consciously preparing or thinking about that, if that makes any sense. So finally, something drastic, major, huge has happened, that I had such a gush of bleeding at the client's place to that, where the blood went all over the floor, the legs, I mean, it was, and this is in spite of tampon, in spite of the pad. It was as if somebody had just cut me with a knife, and then the gushing of the blood went all over. I mean, it was so traumatizing. It was so embarrassing. It was, when it comes to your body, and it is, while on one side, and the professional and the medical part of me, I know that I have no control, and you know that there is nothing you can do about it, and there is nothing to be embarrassed when there is a medical emergency, but that the human side of you is still, oh my God, I'm bleeding all over somebody's floor. I mean, it's and a part is like, it's me bleeding, it's coming out of me, okay? So, but that is how far I let it go before I actually got my ass to move and go to a doctor. What has happened now in the meantime, I became severely anemic, so we had to, my fibroids grew beyond and above everything. It was sizes of big oranges, and they were heavy, and they were pressing onto my colon and the sigmoid colon, and pressing onto my cervix, and they were creating a lots of digestive issues, for which I've been going regularly to the my gastro guy, and we've been trying everything and some tablets, and I've been suspecting of irritable bowel syndrome and chronic inflammation of the colon, and then done a colonoscopy, done endoscopy, got a checkup, been suspected of a Crohn's disease. So we've been throughout actually looking completely somewhere else, because in many cases that 56% of women with the fibroid issues do have one or the other digestive problem as well, which can be constipation, but it can be diarrhea, or it can be also lots of bloating. So, and because it is not the same for everybody, many times it gets completely undiagnosed. So when I look back, I had a whole lot of signs throughout, which kind of I missed in my body, my doctors missed for me. So, but finally, once I got to the doctor, I almost needed an emergency surgery. I got another 15 days to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks period from that incident till my actual surgery, because my bloods were all over the place, and we needed to actually build me up to withstand the surgery. So those 3 weeks, it was just, okay, let's pick up the body. And while this was happening, I've been having a full schedule, working out every day, been on the pole every other day. I've been doing everything, and I've been put on a bed rest. I will put that I need to just rest. And the thing is, I have not been really noticing anything. Yes, I did notice that I've been a bit tired, but I thought I was lazy. So I missed a lot of signs that my body, because at that time I was also working every day 13 to 15 hours. I've been doing so anything that I've been feeling in my body, I thought, oh, this is just because I'm having a crazy schedule. Now when I look back, I'm not really sure, but this is mind over matter, right? Anyhow, so I'm just giving you kind of what all was happening in my life, in my particular case. Now, once I was done reading on the physical part of it, what surgery entails, what if it's a laparoscopic surgery? Luckily, my doctor managed to take everything out, and that was a big job, to take everything out laparoscopically. What are the consequences for laparoscopic? What are the physical issues when it comes to the open cut surgery? It would be as if I had another C-section. Then I also started reading about the other aspect. And what has happened is that while I was in the class with one of my online clients, and I was like, hey, just giving you heads up, in a few weeks or a month, whenever I get the clearance from my doctor, I'm going to have a hysterectomy. And then her reaction was like, oh my God. And I was like, I said, it's okay. It's not. And her reaction was, it just took me by surprise. It really, because it wasn't just her concern for me going through the surgery, but it was also a concern as how will you cope and manage as a woman. So, and I thought that actually never crossed my mind. It not until that moment, right? And that was still before the surgery. It has never crossed my mind how it is going to affect my womanhood, or whether it's going to affect my life. It just didn't even come into my preview. It just didn't compute with me. So then I started reading about it, and I started noticing that there are women who had a very negative experience, and who had again all of those things, loss of a sexual of a libido, of sexual desire. Okay, vaginal dryness is different to the loss of libido. Vaginal dryness is very commonly reported as a part of post-hysterectomy, but that also can be contributed that menopause will set earlier. So depending on the age of the woman, possibly that vaginal dryness has something to do with the earlier onset of menopause, because women's body is remarkable. I never say women age. We change. We change. And every age that we go through, we experience such a fundamental changes. It is almost that we are kind of getting to the more and deeper core of our higher selves. And I feel there is nothing more powerful as a mature woman. It's like that is something that I deeply believe. So loss of a sexual libido reported as the one. So this is something to pay attention to if you're very attached to that part of self. Then that some women were experiencing depression, sense of loss, lesser woman, if you wish, regardless whether they had children or didn't have children. So that I found very, very interesting. And then I sat down with myself and kind of really got very deep into my own self and sense of self, and no part of my body define me. I don't think I'm a less of a woman without an arm, that I'm a less of a woman without a breast, that I'm a less of a woman without my uterus. I do not feel that any body part define me or my womanhood. I also do not think that a woman who cannot have children, for whatever reason, that is less of a woman or less of a mother. And that's something that I'm I'm strongly rooted and grounded in that belief. My child came out of me, but I really believe that Daniela would have ended up being mine any other way as well. She was meant to come to me. Now, whether I birthed her, whether I adopted her, whether it was through that would have not made any difference. Whether it is my genetic material or it's not, because she was to be mine. So it was kind of really nice and in a way a beautiful kind of realization in that moment, at that point of time, that my womanhood is not defined by body parts. That my body parts do not define me as a woman, as a soul, as a human being. that is this body. This body is right here, right now. This body changes. This body is eventually going to shrivel, shrink, and diminish, and that is normal. And that doesn't mean that who I am in my deepest self, is going to change. And once I have that clarity, once I have that. Once I had that sort of answer, which sort of, I mean, as I said, it never crossed my mind till the way my client reacted. And the way she reacted, I understood many different layers of her concern. And then I kind of sat down with myself and sort of had this talk with myself. So I do understand how a lot of women can go through this, because I have friends who have had multiple miscarriages, and the way society treated them, the way they have treated themselves because of the way we are conditioned as a women, and the way they found their true self through that. And the way we are looking, if a woman chooses or cannot have children, the way we are looking at her or her family or the choices. So I can understand how lots of women can have this thought, because it is not about us, it is our tradition, it is our environment, it is our upbringing, it's our own expectations of our own self that all get shifted, shaken, turned upside down, if you wish. All right, so I feel it is important to talk about it as a possibility, as something that sit with yourself and figure it out. If what defines you? Are you defined by your body parts? And do you have other choices and options to explore before you opt for a surgical? And then when you go for the surgery, to go eyes wide open. So I just wanted to share my experience. And as I said, I find that every experience in life is about to teach you something, to bring you closer to your true purpose, to remind you of your purpose, and kind of re-strengthen you in it. And I mean, I am so grateful, because now 8 weeks, 9th week into recovery, touch wood, the recovery is coming along very well. It gave me opportunity to kind of reset, hit a little pause. Long term, I have absolutely no sense of loss, because again, no body part defined me. I define my body. I define my body parts, not the other way around, because I'm not my body. I am within my body at this point of time, and when the time is right, I'm continuing the journey, leaving this body in this plane. So right now, 8 weeks later, my recovery is going on. My blood work is looking awesome. So find your own story, find your own truth. See if there are other choices and options you can explore prior. Find a doctor that's gonna be mindful about this. As I say, I believe in divine guidance, and I know that what is meant to come my way always finds me and comes my way, in terms of a great doctor, in terms of a good support, amazing support system, in terms of even these questions that kind of shake you and put you in perspective. And so I really hope that whatever path you choose, it's going to be the right for you, that you're going to thrive in your life, recover quickly. And I hope that by sharing this, that it can help someone at least kind of get a little bit more clarity. So on that note, love and light to all.